What about the role of the federal government in education and tying it into their tacking the student loan issue onto the medical bill, which means that ultimately the federal government will be the only institution which can give a kid a loan for college. So can you relate those two? Because that's where we are.
Who's up first, me?
I'm sorry? Yes.
Yeah. Linda, by the way, I do want to make a correction, Dan. I know we're at the point where we've been incredibly civil with one another, but I do want to make mention that there is no reference in that article, World Net Daily, about me going after,
the left.
Well, talking to the left. Let's be clear about
I
something.
think the word was leverage the left.
Okay. Yeah.
It's a difficult thing because the rest of us haven't read the article.
Okay.
And we're not in the debate format.
Yeah,
so unfortunate.
Right. But I did have to correct that there's no mention of the anti-war left there. So I have to clarify the record because I'm trying to be as meticulous as possible. That's right. Yeah, I mean we're back to the single payer problem again, aren't we? Right. Instead of having single payer in healthcare, we're having single payer in loans, student loans. This is part and parcel of an enormous topic, which has to do with our monetary system, which I'm not going to address here now because it's too big and it requires a lot more than 2 minutes. But of course, they shouldn't be in that business. They're pushing their way in. And one thing that you can guarantee from that is that education costs will continue to skyrocket. They'll continue to peddle loans to people who shouldn't be going to college, frankly. We have far too many people going to schools. So of course they shouldn't have anything to do with it. And I want to make one point about this. Education, as a recent father who's going through the whole process of finding schools for his daughter, I cannot, and most of you who've gone through this process know what I'm talking about. It is the single most local issue that you can be involved in. I mean, it is parent, teacher, and child. That's it. To assume for a second that some bureaucrats in this swamp in D.C. can somehow improve the lives of our kids through this Department of Education, they've got to be kidding me. I am for responsibly unwinding the government so that, as possible, yeah, I mean, I have this vision. One of the things I try and do is give you a vision of the direction I'd like to see us go. And I want the government to be a fraction of what it is today. And I would reasonably and responsibly unwind most departments in the federal government that aren't unconstitutional. But the one I would cut tomorrow without compunction is the Department of Education. $8 billion. The only people I think who would notice are the people who work there. Who would know? And maybe and maybe the credit agencies that say, okay, the federal government's got another $8 billion that they can use to cut the deficit. So yeah, of course I don't want the federal government muscling into anything, but that's part and parcel of this whole healthcare bill, which is going to be, I think, ultimately very disastrous for the republic.
Thank you. Dana, would you like to respond to that? The role of the federal government in education and now in student loans.
Yeah. When I read that the student loan program was in the healthcare bill, it just made me realize just how convoluted that piece of legislation is. And again, I still am of the thinking that there's not a person alive that knows what's in there. It's going to unravel little by little and be added to and manipulated. So I would say, yeah, I think I probably differ slightly with John. I think the Department of Education I could see without. I do think there were some benefits of No Child Left Behind, only in that there are certain skills that it is important to measure in children, whether it's, the very basic skills, reading, writing, because it's the only way that a school can be evaluated. And one thing we saw in California back in Schwarzenegger's first 4 reform proposals, remember, is that they actually, the citizens of California voted down a bill that said that a teacher had to be evaluated for more than, the law as it stands is they only have to be evaluated after their 2nd year, and then they have tenure forever. I think there has to be some sort of control on that. As far as it being so federally, I'd say as little as possible, except some very basic standards that we as a country have to make sure that our children achieve, because we are doing so poorly in the world. And I think if we just leave it up to certain areas, there will be huge discrepancies. And again, my understanding is that test is mainly to help evaluate which children need help to get to at least a base level. And I'm always astounded when I see the results of those, when schools say, well, you know, we're up to 30% of our children reading at grade level, and that kind of makes the grade. I think it's very disturbing. There's one thing that happened in the city recently where with all the I would agree with John 100% too, in that a lot of the administration, I think even on a state and local level, I think they should just all be done away with. All the money should go into there should be very little regulation, and the money should go into the classrooms for the teachers to use with their children.
Yes.
But in the city, they just, while they're laying off teachers like mad and cutting programs, they just approved a $250,000 pilot program for 250 children to teach them ethnic studies in the city of San Francisco. The kids could probably teach the teachers ethnic studies, but I think, again, it goes back to that idea that children have to be taught how they can participate in the opportunities of this country and to learn about this country, not about the things that divide us, but about the things that unite us. And so I would be willing to go along with John. If it was the Department of Education that had to go, I could probably buy into that.
One last question. I just want to make a note that somebody sent me an email at work, and I checked it out, that there was a federal requisition from the Department of Education for, I think it was 127 12-gauge shotguns.
Oh, yeah.
I didn't know they had their own army. Did you? I didn't. Quick question, quick answer, please. What is the Republican Party position on contributing to Republican candidates in this race? Are you having trouble raising money?
Oh, where do we stand?
Yeah, I mean, no, the question is, does the party have a position on contributing to the candidates now? Or are they supporting you, or are you out on your own at this point? And then somebody wanted me to add, how are you going to exorcise Nancy Pelosi from San Francisco?
As a priest, I know. We probably love the opportunity. I think it's pretty clear, it was clear in my last election, the Republicans have a very important, the Republican National Committee has a very important obligation to make sure that the races that look like they are the most winnable races are the races that will get the money. So I doubt that we will get any money here. We do get support in other ways, information, things like that. My fundraising is going extremely well. I think we've, and this is real important in a race against Nancy Pelosi. I think I'm about, at the end of last year, the last FEC report, I was about 7 times more donations. I think mine was almost 400 compared to John's 50. One of the things you have to understand is when you're running a race against the deep pockets of Nancy Pelosi, that kind of fundraising effort is very important. And that'll give me an opportunity to address his remarks about how much money I made in the last time. You have to understand, I'm a single woman, I have my own business. One of the things that was extremely important in the last race is I could not go into any sort of big debt on my own. Much of that money came in at the very end of the campaign. I did not spend any money I did not have. So that money legally goes into the next campaign. So I make no apologies about that. And then also, I'm going to take some of my time to address another thing he mentioned about the percentage of votes I got. I mean, if you're a Republican, I mean, unless you've been under a rock, you know how hard 2008 was on Republicans. We had some very interesting issues in the city, too. Of course, the Obama phenomenon was amazing, and we had a very large number of new Democratic voters. But also, one thing he conveniently forgets is we had 3 major candidates. We had, Cindy Sheehan raised well in excess of 500,000. So when you're dividing a vote count by percentages among 3 people, it's obviously going to be a very different picture than just 2. And so I think that's important. And then just the idea that the money I raised is going to fight Nancy Pelosi. Unfortunately, I'm going to have to spend a lot of money in the primary, just letting our Republican voters know my positions and John's positions, and our polling has shown that they are much more apt to go with a traditional Republican about strong defense than a libertarian that is less so. So we're spending a lot of the money that I had hoped to spend on Nancy Pelosi here in the primary, but that's okay because many of those same issues I'll fight Nancy Pelosi on in the general. So.